How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another live episode of Tier Talk. Hey, Russ, what are you eating?
Cheese.
Oh, that was Hey, Russ. Real quick, guys, before I do my intros and stuff, I just want to share it out to one more group. So bear with me for 1 second, because it's one group I cannot share it out to through StreamYard. I have to go through my Facebook account and do it. And I'm almost done. Correctional Brotherhood, Officer Brotherhood. There it is. We're done. All right, guys. So real quick, this live stream, we're going to answer all your Q&As. Hopefully we have enough time. We're going to run a short live stream today, but we still want to do a live show. Guys, I have 3 sponsors I'd just like to announce at the very beginning of the show. We have American Military University. If you guys get a chance, please check out American Military University. It's a great school. If you're looking to get a degree, seek higher education, definitely go to American Military University because they are supportive of what we do in corrections, supportive of Tier Talk, and it's a great online school. We also have Guardian RFID, from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit guardianfid.com for more information. Guys, we do post up content on Guardian RFID as well, so check out their YouTube channel. And we also have Shaya USA. Shaya USA is the world's leading weapon, cell phone, and contraband detection system manufacturer for corrections. For more information, contact Joe Vasquez at 440-561-7615. He's a subject matter expert. He's passionate about our industry, and he will take good care of you. So if you guys are, looking for a metal detector, hand wands, whatever it is, Joe Vasquez, give him a call. He'll help you out. And let's give some shout outs. We got Eric. What's up, Eric? Good to have you back. Can't wait for those challenging questions. We got Brett. What's up, Brett? Good evening, sir. Welcome here. Jen. Hello, Jen. And yes, I'm still in the dungeon, Jen. You probably can't see, but there's shackles over in the corner and some bread and water. But I broke out. She hasn't realized yet. But when she does, I may have to leave real quickly and just play the role. Damn, Ganji, I thought you only came out at night. Yeah, I did an early one today. We got Sergeant Beast Lawson. I saw you flex when you turned around for the glass. That's just Russ is built. And then we got first question coming our way. Let's get right into it. What are your thoughts of an officer working a housing unit by themselves being outnumbered 160 to 1? All right, Russ. So now, Russ, you know what's good about this question real quick? So let's do it both ways. Because when you answer this question, there's going to be 2 perspectives. One perspective is how we think the public may see it. And then the other perspective is how we see it. Because I mean, to be honest with you, you may have that number, but the layout of the facility is what really determines how many inmates in your area you could safely do. And again, the layout meaning, how's the unit, laid out? What can you see? What can't you see? If the inmates are secured or not secured. So sometimes we may look at a number and say, wow, the odds are crazy, but it could also be a lockdown unit. It could be linear. But Rush, just in general, what's your thoughts on that question?
I think that a lot of these facilities are really doing a huge disservice to their people. I mean, when you're stuck there and you have no possibility of backup, how are you expected to really truly enforce anything? How are you expected to do what I always promulgate, what I always put forth as being, proactive and preventative versus, just, observing and then responding whenever response manages to get there. And then, what happens if you can't hit your panic button? What happens if you can't make it to your radio? What happens if the guy or gal who's supposed to be watching the camera, has to step away for a minute? I think that's a ridiculous ratio to try and manage at that level and only be doing it to save dollars. What about saving lives? What about, pushing these inmates to the edge day in and day out of having to comply with the actual laws, procedures, and policies of that particular institution? So not a big fan of that. I really think that, 1 is far too few. 2 isn't even enough. three or four, that would be good. But I've seen the same thing, when I think the last one of the last major units that I worked, we had about 1,100 inmates, and we had probably 13 or 14 staff. But we weren't locked in there in a way. We were functioning in pairs, and even sometimes three at a time, and we could send people back and forth across the unit, which was enormous. We had a 1/3 mile track for the inmates to run in that unit. So I just don't see that, and I don't see how anyone can feel good about saying that, hey, we're running a unit and we have one guy for 160. I think that the odds are so bad against you. I wouldn't want to work in that type of a unit.
Yeah, and guys, I want to say something. So I agree. I mean, the layout truly does matter. If you're working dorms or even in any setting, you really should have two officers on the floor and one in a safe area that can oversee things. And in case something happens, they can make sure that a response is notified and that, help is always on the way. I mean, one thing is that's great. That gives confidence, but also having that person next to you on the floor, that's your immediate backup. So that to me also adds a little level of confidence to, whatever you're going to have to do to be effective. If I have to grab that contraband, if I have to, give an inmate a directive because they're not listening. So, walking alone can be quite intimidating. I'm going to be honest with you. It can be. I mean, again, you have all these numbers out there, but having said that, having that person next to you kind of reinforces your level of authority, reinforces that level of confidence. So I do totally agree that no matter what the numbers are, you should have somebody next to you immediately, just in case something happens. And then obviously at the higher level, far removed, but they can see, and then just if code happens, they can, call that code and get that response team. But I will say this, on third shift, you may only see, or on the overnight shifts, you may only see one. I get it. The facility's locked down. Interactions are extremely limited. But if you're still working a dorm, and if you're expected to tour the dorm at night, because sometimes what they'll do for the dorms is they'll just lock them in, and then you can maybe walk through an overpass or something where you can kind of see everything from above, but you really want to limit going into that dorm at night because of limited staffing. You don't want to be opening up those cages, all day. You want to kind of say, okay, you know what? We're going to have to go in these few moments. And at that point, it's very secured. Everybody knows you're going in. They're going to announce it, hey, officer on dorm. And then you should have somebody definitely watching you from afar. But it would be great if somebody was with you there as well. So, I mean, again, it really is that immediate presence. So you could also work in a unit that's lockdown unit. I mean, I worked in units that were 4 tiers high that had over 160 inmates. Now, the problem with this is that the reason why you need, in my mind, 2 people for this at least. First off, anything can happen overnight. You can think the cell door is shut and it's not. We get that. But let's just say a standard routine night. You're probably going to have to tour every half an hour, and that's hard to do. To constantly be walking up and down straight throughout 8 hours. We know that's not happening. So having at least 2 can kind of divide that. And then maybe that makes it a little bit more manageable. So again, for people on the outside looking in, this officer is going to have to check on these individual cells one by one, 160 inmates, and then literally have to go right back a half an hour later, do it again and do it again. And to be honest with you guys, as much as we think that's realistic, that's extremely hard because there are things that are going to happen in between. Even on third shift, got to record stuff in the logbook. Got my supervisors coming in. Emergency could happen. You could have a medical concern, and now the tours start to lessen because I'm stuck at the cell dealing with this inmate's medical concern. So I would say you definitely need someone that's next to you, and then you need an eye in the sky. And then again, we could deal with the layout to determine what the numbers are. But I will tell you what the ratio could be. But I will tell you one thing. I was trying to say at the beginning. We don't really have a ratio of number of officers to inmates, even though I do believe you should always have 2 and then the one in the sky. But with that said, it really is also dependent on the layout. How much can the officer see, that's in front of them? And if there's any moment there's a blind spot where there's certain areas where inmates live that I can't see, then maybe, we should have another officer present So we have constant eyes, and also we're not so predictable. Because think about it, if I'm in one area of the unit, then you know that you could do whatever you want over here because I'm stuck over here. So it's good to kind of have, a few eyes if you can, two sets of eyes. Would you agree with that, Russ, or no?
Yeah, but I still think, just no matter which way you're looking at it, trying to get by with fewer and fewer people is just a bad idea overall. So, I mean, I know we want that one in the sky, but we also have to think about if something happens with whatever number of inmates that we have out, and you can't help that number in a dorm, where is your response going to come from? What time it is, and just for instance, in California, we know that one comes before three. I just want to mention that again. um, and you've got a dorm, with 30, 40, 50 inmates in it, say, and you can muster what, four or five, officers or deputies, if it's a jail or whatever. You're really stacking things against you. And, people say, well, we put them through a classification. And, I don't even want to hear that, because I've seen minimum inmates kill other minimum inmates. So it's not that thing where you can justify it, because you just don't know. You have to have somewhere that you can draw that manpower from, and calling people at home in the middle of the night is not how you're going to get people there.
Yeah, and guys, even as I say, even in full men, they could be impulsive. Again, something situational can occur, and an inmate that's never been a problem before all of a sudden becomes one. So it's always good to have that backup right next to you, and then hopefully that buys some time, but definitely someone over you in a secured area that the inmates cannot get to. That's a great deterrence right there. And also, if something happens, that a code's being called. It's not something that you have to stress about. Like, oh shit, while I'm trying to fight for my life, I'm worried about getting to my radio. You don't have to do that. Strictly focus on fighting for your life. Do what you got to do. Focus on fighting for your life. I already called the code. People are coming. I mean, think about that too. Think about when you don't have that backup next to you, or you don't have that backup in the sky. You can't focus on protecting yourself right off the bat. You're focused on getting that code called, and that right there is a huge issue. When for a fact that if someone's up in the sky, I can go right at it and fully protect myself and do what I got to do because the team's coming. Because I know for a fact that the delay to protect our own lives because they're trying to get to that radio to make that call, that could be a big difference between life and death. Okay, so the next question comes from Eric. Wow, it's a good question here. I don't know if I ever answered that. So what we could do is we could generalize this too, Russ, if you want. We could kind of make it like a supervisory role. But he goes, Anthony, what was the most challenging for you transitioning from custody to admin? So let me go first on this, Russ, and then we'll just.
Okay.
All right. So I have 7 years in admin now. 7 years will be April. So as an officer and as a sergeant, let's see. So I'm pushing on 19 or 20 years, something like that. I've completed 19. I started in 2002, December. So at the end of this year, I've completed 20. So I was an officer and a sergeant from 2002 to 2015, April of 2015. Then I've been a superintendent and now an associate at that point now, which is right below an administrator, so right below a warden. I believe for me, the biggest challenge, and I don't know if a lot of people are going to see it this way, is that when you move up, you start seeing a bigger picture and you can't unsee what you see. And sometimes translating what you see to the front line so they can understand the liability of it all. So I don't know if there's a conflict when it comes to this. I know us in management, we should be more strategic, which means that when we implement measures, you may not see it right away, but eventually as time progresses, you start to see the actions we're putting into play. Sometimes the front line wants immediate action, which can be seen immediately, but really may not really attack a disease. It just more of kind of goes after the symptom, where for us in management, we're looking at the liability. We want to go after the disease. We want to put something to rest. And don't get me wrong, we should be putting reactionary measures to delay. I get it, but there's always going to be an effort to think upstream. Also, the level of responsibility. I mean, when you become admin, you're picking up on positions that you don't necessarily have experience in, and you're facilitating the needs of these many departments. that you've never worked before. So, you kind of have to try to get a true understanding of how the facility has to run as a whole, not just departmental. You have to look outside your box and really stretch outside your comfort zone. But with that said, I've always continued to grow. So to me, challenge is more of a, it's not an obstacle. It's an opportunity. Let's see what I can do. So if you're looking to move up, you have to realize something. Every area, every position you go into isn't a stop. It's a next area of growth. So you have to be opened with, you have to go in with an open mindset, a growth mindset, knowing that, okay, guys, whatever comes my way, I'll take it as a challenge or I'll take it as an opportunity, and you continue to learn. And the one last thing is the day doesn't really end when you're in management. Yeah, obviously we do work, a set specific time, but we do have on-call responsibilities. I mean, we're responsible for the facility even when we're home, because we are getting phone calls and we're delegating things, which, yes, could be, I know some people may think it's easier. It's really not. Trust and believe, you're out there with your family and you're getting a phone call and all of a sudden everything has to stop, and you have to kind of remain focused to make sure you're making the right decisions. And some of them are very stressful to the point where your family starts to see you kind of like, hey, guys, you got to stop. I can't hear what's going on the phone. And again, that has a way of creeping in. That's why, when some people say leave home at home or leave work at work and home at home, for management, it may not be that easy because they're dealing with the on-call and they'll be in the middle of watching a movie and getting a phone call of some serious shit that they have to regulate or take responsibility for. But as I said, it is a very good move because I do want to learn what the correctional system is about. So I'm happy that I did take the step up, Eric, but I will say I took it with the growth mindset, knowing that I'm just going to keep going, keep riding this out to see where I go. No position's my end game until I finally retire. So I'm planning on learning something my last day. But I want to be fair because Russ listened to me. Hey, Russ, let me ask you a question from another perspective, too. Going from frontline to a supervisor, what were some of the challenges for you?
I think that the challenges were not all that great. I don't think that there was any real great transition or getting my head in a different game. I know there was definitely a thing with big picture thinking and stuff. The thing that was kind of hard is there were some people with some really petty ideas about what was going on with regards to promotions and so forth. Like within the first week, I had someone who was actually the president of the union tell me that I wasn't one of them anymore. And I thought, wow, that's really petty. I'm not here trying to grind out. I'm not trying to write people up and stuff. I'm still trying to be the first one there, and I'm trying to train up all my people and stuff. And so some people, their little fiefdoms and their territoriality and the way that they view what's going on can be really distorted. And I never knew that those people were the ones with the distortions. Perhaps before I'd seen it before in some administrators. I'd seen it in some other managers and stuff. But I never thought that that these guys were suddenly being part of the union. They were suddenly going to turn over nothing that actually happened. And I just thought that it's really hard to account for the viewpoints of some people. And so there were some people that you just had, brush off. I'll be there and have your back, but I just can't stand to be around you in any other capacity. So I think that was an eye opener. For the most part, though, I would say that the people that I was then in charge over and stuff, I mean, they were really great. They gave me all kinds of effort, all kinds of 100% go. I remember toward the end of my career as a sergeant, we had a really serious incident, and it was really something to behold to see all these people that I'd been there with all these years just carry things out because I couldn't be in the mix in this one. I had to be there directing the traffic. I couldn't just be in there slinging them with these guys. And they recognized all the inmates that were involved in this riot that we had. It was a small riot, but it was really intense what was going on. And they acquitted themselves marvelously. And I didn't have to. I mean, I didn't have to tell them to do anything for the most part. They came in and checked with me. I made a couple of comments on things, and I mean, they could have done the whole thing without me. And to me, that was the heartening part. They didn't need me. They were self-sufficient. And so whether that was partly my doing by the way I trained them, or they were just great people, either way, that was kind of my introduction to the whole thing. Even though, like I say, that one incident did happen at the end of my career, and I ended up under investigation for it all and stuff. But all those guys still went to my bail over it.
Yeah, and guys, if I can, I have a Daily Reader coming out, and one of the sections I have in the Daily Reader talks about the phrase "remembering your roots." It's in either, I think, the month of February. I forget. This Daily Reader is going to cover a lot, guys. Just random thoughts, but and there's actually another area of the Daily Reader that's going to cover another part called change versus evolution, and this is actually a good question. So guys, I like what he says. One hard challenge is a lot of friends and coworkers expect buddy protection. I want to mention something here. So I don't believe in saying the word change. I believe saying the word evolve. I believe that change kind of minimizes what we've done in the past to bring us to this point so we can move forward. So evolution kind of says that. It reminds us that we're building from a foundation, which most people, I feel, are more readily able to accept, as opposed to, hey, change what you're doing. It's like, well, what am I doing that's wrong? So I like evolving into that. Now, when someone says, remember your roots, this is what I'm trying to get at here, is that I get, if I'm moving up into admin and someone says, hey, Gangi, you got to remember your roots, I get it, because part of those roots are what's going to make me excellent in what I do. Because I find myself, even in administration right now, when I have to make a decision, especially if it falls within my experiences, my scope of experiences, I always go back to thinking of my days as an officer, because that's when I was on the floor. That's when things were immediate to me. And I would like to see how I would solve things at that level. And believe it or not, it translates very well at the high level that I'm at now on the administrative level. So again, the general I work myself down to the specific. But if the phrase "remember your roots," as Russ mentioned and as Brett is mentioned, is being used to hold yourself back, to kind of say, hey, remember your roots, as a way to, be an obstacle to my growth. Like, yeah, at some point, you may have to, after exhausted effort, discipline a former coworker, a former, or a friend, or whatever it is. When they start to use the word "remember your roots" in an effort to stop you from doing that, that's a manipulative tactic. So for someone in management, don't get lost between that. And if you're a frontline, don't use it for that reason. You want us to remember our roots for the right reasons, not to get you out of a charge because you've done something foolish. Because one is remember your roots for professional growth, and the other is remember your roots to benefit me, to personalize me. That's why I always tell people, if you're going to make this a career, make the right choices from day one. So when people say, remember your roots, it doesn't change, because whoever you were as a rookie, you kept that same professionalism straight up to the highest level. So, at the end of the day, your decisions are always going to be what's the right thing to do, even if it's not the most popular thing. I like this. As an officer, it's hard to see that a new director of policy is, in fact, to protect the officers. Yeah, I'll give you another one. It's a good point. And Russ, I got this in my Daily Reader too. Management's effort to protect the inmate after they assaulted staff. Again, we have to make the effort to protect the inmate, because people are going to expect us to retaliate. So you'll see management scrambling to do what they can, camera watch, all this, switching escorts, shipping the inmate out, whatever they could do, because they want to make sure that they cover anything that could occur that can give that inmate an argument, where we're on the defensive. So I think that's a great thing from Brett, where as an officer, it's hard to see the new directives or policies, in fact, to protect the officers. And Russ, let me ask you a question about what Brett just said, because I agree with Brett 100%. That's one of the things that you see at the highest picture that is very hard to translate to that front line. But don't get me wrong, there are some that get it. Trust me, there are some that get it. They know it, create the momentum, they keep moving. But Russ, isn't that you find that was hard to translate? Like some of our actions that people may think protect the inmate is actually we're doing what we can to protect ourselves.
Yeah, it's one of those things like some people just really can't put themselves into that position where they can see it from the admin viewpoint. I feel like I could, and that I understood some of the reasons for it because I felt like I was, pretty hip to things like, case law and prior precedent and some other legal terminology, and I understood policy and procedure. But and I don't think that all of it was necessarily to protect the officers. I think that especially later in my career, we saw a lot of things driven by agenda, and that's why it really counts to get the right people in there to try and do what we can to not let agenda simply run over what's good established correctional policy, procedure, and past practice. So there's a lot to that. If you're out there on the front line, try and observe and feel like what it would be for you to try and run that incident, not at the tactical level, but at the strategic level, and put yourself in the shoes of what it looks like to see that from that perspective, because it is something that's totally different. When you're there and it happens, then you should have a better understanding of what it is that you need to do to justify what the actions were that you took, and then to be able to explain that on paper and give those people that are up above you the things that they need in order to help keep you safe. And that's one of the reasons why I got so strong about and in my report writing, was to be able to cover people and use the system to keep us all professionally safe. Physical safety is a different matter that happens out there, in one way or another, whether you like it or not, and you're either successful or you're unsuccessful at it. It's a different thing to keep yourself professionally safe by not ignoring the things and the reporting dictates that you're bound by.
Yeah, and guys, I want to make sure, like, I like you made a very good point too. I think with is it Brett? Brett's question, and that was a good point you made, Russ. We're not talking about the political agenda that seems to be very biased in their approach, even though eventually we're going to have to try to connect to that and figure out what we can do to make it more balanced. We're talking about maybe something like an upstream strategic measure to help the facility, and then having to translate that downstream. I think that's where the concern is. Like, I mean, there are, like, as I mentioned before, you're going to want, sometimes frontline wants immediate reaction, and maybe not so aware of what that ripple effect may be. I'll give you an example, because I did a poll, actually. You know what? Let me pull up the poll now, because this is a perfect example of what it is that we're trying to get to. The question that I asked was, well, let's do this. Hold on. Sorry. It's going to repeat me. All right, hold on. Let me just find it. It wasn't that long ago. Hold on. Let me see. Give me a second. Hold on. Incorrections. No, hold on. Bear with me. It's right at the very beginning. Hold on. Hey, Russ, tell me a little bit about Keepers of Chaos, why I find this.
All right. For those of you that may or may not be aware, I run a group inside of Facebook called Keepers of Chaos. It's for the corrections professionals. Anyone that works in corrections, even if you're not at the custody level, is welcome to join. That is an attempt to bridge gaps and further understanding amongst all of the potential different divisions and departments inside of corrections. And the real focus that we're now on within that group is excellence in corrections. And that's something that I've really wanted to push for a long time, in order to give us both a sense of what it is that we mean to society, and eventually and throughout to teach society what it is that we do mean to them, and how we are the ones that stand in that gap against the particular evils and the dangers that exist in this world because of some of the individuals that we have to deal with on a daily basis.
All right, so guys, I can tell you, I remember the question. I just can't find it. So I asked staff, would you violate policy and procedure to save an officer? That's all I did. I just wanted that question out there, and I wanted to see the reaction. So, of course, it went to the high percentage. 85, 90% said 100% they would violate policy and procedure to save a staff member. Very few actually asked, well, it depended on what those policies and procedures were about. Would my response to save that officer, to save that staff member, would it cause a threat to something else, or to the rest of the facility, or even to the person I'm responding to? Or would it hurt the team that's got to respond? So I think what happens here is that frontline looks to react a lot, and I get it, because to them they're right there, they're immediate to any change. We at the higher level, we look to be strategic, but don't get me wrong, because we're not immediately on the front line, we can maybe feel a little bit more patient with it, because we're sitting back here, a little bit distance. And as we're trying to come up with something that's a little bit more evergreen, we're not really pressured by the environment for an immediate action. I get it. Frontline, 100%. They need immediate action because they're dealing with the pressures of the environment. But I want people to know something. We can never have conflict when it comes to something strategic and something reactionary. If there's ever a conflict, what has to win, correct? The strategic side. The strategic side has to win, because in the end, guys, those are solving that way is where it becomes long lasting, so we don't have to worry about the problem ever again. And again, we can think of many issues, when it comes to a reactionary measure versus strategic measure. But in the end, what I would like for the front line to see is that even if we're solving something, maybe immediately at the reactionary level, trust and believe you should have management in play thinking of stuff that's more strategic and long lasting that you won't see overnight, but it should be coming, as time progresses. Let me see. Welcome aboard. They began their career on the 18th. Well done. Congratulations. Let's see. Hey, Anthony and Russ, new follower here from Toronto. Love the channel. Love you too, Julie. Thanks for watching. Elizabeth sends love to Russ's group, Keepers of Chaos. We know Liz. Hey, good question from Eric. Should correctional management strive for a workforce that is more demographically reflective of the inmate population? Do you want me to go first with that, or Russ, you want that?
No, I'm willing to risk it all.
No, Russ. Well, let's remember.
But no,
Go first. Go first.
Okay, so I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but the way that I look at things is we're in a real bad situation right now in corrections. And what we need to do is we need to find the people that can step into those shoes. I understand how politicians see things and how they want to be the ones to put their little seal of approval, their imprimatur on it, and to be able to say, I did that, and for them to be able to use those terms like, more inclusive and demographic and diversity and things like that. And somewhere in all of that, what happens is we lose what we're really looking for, which are just people who are just damn well dedicated to it, right? And so I am of the opinion that that all of those words, however well that people may mean them, get us down in the weeds where we can't even see the forest for the trees. And what we need, because right now, I mean, look at it. I mean, just we don't have the numbers to do anything. We're right at the point where, basically we got people chugging along, their second, third, fourth, 16th hour in a row. And we have people that want to talk using words like that, right? We're in a crisis here. We need everybody. This should be all hands on deck. We should have everyone. We should have everyone that's qualified able to come to the forefront, and we shouldn't be talking about excluding people because they don't meet our demographic of inmates. That's
Yeah,
crazy. That's crazy talk to me.
right. I agree, and I want to add on that too. Like, I don't, to be honest with you, I agree with what Russ is saying, 100%. What Brett's saying. We need quality and quality for the job, not for quantity to fit a quota. I mean, I would hope that they didn't even ask the questions of what ethnicity someone is on the, just hire them based on their, what it is that stands out from the resume, the interview process, whatever it is. I mean, and I will tell you something right now, guys. If you do your job and you do what's expected, you play the professional role, you can have an impact. Maybe at the end of the day, it's about getting the inmates to see that, it doesn't matter to your color or your ethnicity. If you're professional in your role and you carry out your duty, maybe this teaches them to appreciate everyone at all different levels. I'm going to share a story with you too that, kind of relates to this. So, and again, I don't really share a lot of personalized stories, but I think this actually relates to the question. Hey, Patty, when I worked at the female jail, I had a lot more interaction with the inmates than I do now, obviously up at the higher level. And, you deal with them more often. And, once you start building levels of discretion, once you're kind of been an officer for a bit, you're not going to be quick to write up everything. In some cases, you're just going to kind of get to know the inmate and then try to see what's going on and then try to work out, maybe do some good, effective, honest communication. And, because you are going to deal with problematic behavior. Sometimes there's problematic behavior that's emergent that requires the immediate write-up, but sometimes it's just behavior that's annoying, or something like that. That's not really necessarily a write-up. It's just more for you to manage. I think there's a difference when it comes to that. Unless the annoying becomes so repetitive that through time, just, I have to write up something because it's preventing me to do moving forward. But I remember at a med line one day, basically standing med line, making sure the inmates are taking their medication. It was a 2-officer post. My job was to watch the inmates take the medication, limit their interactions with the nurse until what was needed, what was said, and then keep it moving, but check their mouths to make sure they're taking the meds. And the other officer's job was to regulate the line and then call a group of people in when we were cleared to do so, keeping a certain amount in the area where the nurse was, towards the window, and then a little bit of a line outside just to keep the line moving. So I remember there was one inmate that was having, kind of moving backwards, if you will, but was doing very well. Now, mind you guys, you're going to give out really good, solid advice working in corrections to a lot of these inmates, and you're going to give them some levels of expectation, but you have to realize something. The reason why a lot of them fall back is because the environment that they're in doesn't always receive the good advice that you want them to carry out. So having said that, you're going to see inmates have conflicts and inmates are going to struggle to make the right choice. But as long as they make the effort and you can see they made the effort, you work with them a little bit, and for this one inmate, there was a level of expectation and you could see that she was trying to meet these high levels of expectation. I remember her before she left. She said that no one ever gave her expectations like that before. So she wanted to prove that she could reach that. Now, mind you, some of these inmates are coming from an environment where becoming a gang leader is more celebrated than getting a degree, or whatever it is. It's just, it's a different type of environment. So I remember where I was having an interaction with this female inmate who I had dealt with in the unit for quite some time. And then as I bid it out and went to another area, I would see her once in a while doing the med line or something. Not all the time, a little bit less often, but you could see she wasn't getting in trouble. You could see that, she was kind of where she needed to be. Well, one day something happened at the med line and she started acting out. And I knew that we had taken her so far. So I was working with her to try to have a discussion with her. And I remember the other officer who really didn't know her as much as I did because I knew the inmate from the housing unit. He came in and he got involved, kind of moved me aside. And then I'm just watching it happen, whatever, let him do his thing. He didn't solve the matter at all because I think part of the solution here was also her trusting the person who's delivering the message. So regardless of what ethnicity they had in common, she did not know him as much as she knew who I was, again, within the professional roles of what I do. No undue here. But having said that, when we had our discussion, he said that there's nothing I can do for her because I don't know what it's like to be where she's from. And I said, what does that have to do with where she needs to be? I said, so at that point there, I'm going to be honest with you. If we're going to hire because we feel that hiring, the same ethnicity as the inmates is what's going to promote a better interaction. The only reason why I disagree with that to some extent is because it's not about what you look like. It's about where you are professionally. That's 100%. So again, my interaction with that inmate did not have less value because I was white. Actually could have had more value because now you're teaching the inmate to see things outside of that accepted demographic, to let them know that, hey, listen, there are good people in this profession and we want you to do good with yourself. But to sit there and say, I can't give that inmate any good advice because I may not know what it's like to be her in these shoes, I disagree with that 100%. I think at that point, if I'm looking to elevate her up and get her to where she needs to be, I get it. She may have this past that, okay, I get it, but I'm not focused too much on that. I'm telling her where she needs to be tomorrow and not have her go through the trials and tribulations of what was there yesterday. So again, it depends. Could it be a tool? I think, as I said, the only reason why I disagree with it a little bit is because in the end, guys, all you're doing is cutting off the interactions that these inmates can have with just good quality people, regardless of what their ethnicity is, what their race is. It's just, guys, people of heart, people that are professional, doesn't matter their color. What I care about is, can they do the job? That's it. And at the end of the day, if you want to judge the person by their color first, before their professionalism or whatever it is, guys, what are you doing? I mean, literally what you're doing. I mean, quality first. Quality first. Have the person know that the person can play the role, and then hire them based on their potential, not based because they could fit a quota. And again, I'm not saying that in any way to be negative. It's just my opinion. Got a lot of questions coming in, Russ.
Let's rapid fire, man.
Yeah, because we got a lot coming in here, Russ. Russ, I wish I could find or hire folks like you talking about. All I see is coming through the doors are kiddos just out of the high school. That's kind of what we just talked about. Let's see. I'm here for the stories and because I like you guys. Thank you, Patty. We appreciate that. Now, with that said, my best team was from every possible group. I agree with that. I'm glad we're all on the same page with this. John B asked, how do you guys feel about departments now wanting to implement methadone and suboxone to inmates that have been incarcerated for years? I have my opinion on that, Russ. I deal with it, but we'll have you go first and I'll give mine.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, so if we're going to do methadone and suboxone and this guy's, been in the pen for, how many years and stuff. So why is he having, these current urges and desire for drugs? Well, it's either only because he's been getting it all along, or because now it's like, hey, cool, I used to have a drug problem and I can identify it. And so now I want some suboxone and some methadone. And look, there's definitely some good things about, suboxone treatment and methadone. The problem is, once again, we have politicians get a hold of it and bastardize it and decide that, oh, we're going to offer it to, whoever, anyone that wants it, or that we're not going to have a clear defined standard. So when we lose a clear defined standard in what we're going to do, then, we've lost it all along. What are we to do with people that are in prison and having to get suboxone, right? And then what are we doing with regards to these STG groups that are going in there and they're saying, okay, hey, let's cut the price of our heroin way down there and we'll get everyone that we can, hooked on the heroin. And then they're right on the verge of, they pull back on the heroin. And then what happens? And everyone's going to get dope sick. And then what do the STGs do? They smuggle in the suboxone, right? And then they're paying premium prices for that. All right. Is that part of what's going on? In some places, I fear it could be. I'm not saying because I haven't seen any actual cases and stuff come out, But come on, man, if we're gonna offer this type of treatment to people, it has to be specific, it has to be individualized, and it has to be appropriate. I think that suboxone and methadone belong much more in the confines of the jails and the probation area than it does in any kind of prison.
Yeah, guys, I want to add on this too because I agree with Russ. So when it comes to the suboxone, there's usually going to be a partnership, which should be custody, should be involved in that, and you're going to have mental health and medical who will work together diligently to try to wean the inmate off. I mean, that's the key. I mean, suboxone really is just to eventually wean the inmate off. Hopefully, before they transition, they're not craving anything. Now, some halfway houses they may not utilize suboxone; they may use Sublocade, which is just a shot that the inmate has once a month. But I noticed in the prison systems in general, just across the country that are offering this, the numbers have increased, and there's really no effort to wean anybody off because, in my mind, I think it provides effort, to do that. It's constantly not just giving it to the inmate, but maybe weekly checking to see their progress and lowering the dosage until they no longer need it. The scary thing about this all too is that you may have inmates that never had a drug problem that now do because they decide I'm going to be like everybody else, get on the Suboxone program. And I know the question is, why do it in prison? Well, here's how their interpretation may be. So in a jail, I get it, like Russ said, or on probation, I get it because, in a jail, you could be coming in already addicted, going through withdrawal. And they really don't want people going through withdrawal. That's the concern because people die going through withdrawal. That's where the liability is, right? So you get people that are addicted. They know they're not going to be able to get drugs in the prison, or, it's a little harder to get. So they give them Suboxone to stop the cravings so they don't go through withdrawal. And it kind of helps us because then, with the Suboxone, it limits the withdrawal symptoms. But with that said, when you have an inmate that's in prison who could have been in prison for 20 years, we could automatically think that that inmate has been drug-free. Like, why are you giving them Suboxone? They've been locked up for 20 years. But the problem is that we can't guarantee that. So having said that, we wind up giving the inmates Suboxone because the inmate's been in prison doesn't mean they couldn't have become addicted to a drug. That's the sad thing. But there are ways to measure that out. How you would measure it out is you have an inmate that's got 20 years in and all of a sudden wants to be put on the Suboxone program. The first thing I would do was urine the inmate. If you really need to be on Suboxone, then you're going to test positive for something. So let's just see if you're positive. Well, he's negative. Then what are we putting him on Suboxone for? What is it that they're addicted to right now after 20 years that requires this? I mean, you could have inmates that are locked up that continually to get the charges. I mean, that's another thing that you're going to look at. Besides the work between mental health and medical, custody could also get involved and say, hey, guys, this inmate, has gotten 20 drug charges in the last 2 years. They may be a good candidate for this, but I want you to also know something else. If you're on Suboxone, it should also be partnered with a program. So if you guys want to take Suboxone, guess what else you're also going to have to do? An intensive program. This isn't just a freebie. It's Suboxone's going to, help you with the withdrawal, but we're going to help you out by doing programs. The problem right now is programs cost money. So what do? Is we give them Suboxone as this fail-safe that we haven't been able to program you. So what we did is we'll give you Suboxone, and hopefully that lessens the withdrawal. Guys, Suboxone should be partnered with the program, and it should be intense. This way, if any inmate is looking to manipulate the system to get a free ride from the Suboxone, guess what? It's not. Because if you want to get it, you have to go through this, and this. And then, guys, it's a weaning process. So even if you're trying to get it, it's not going to last long. It's not forever. So, again, I think that we're not doing enough to filter who really needs it. And we're definitely not doing enough on the back end to say, hey, we could take this group off because, the dosage right now is pretty much non-measurable. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Yeah, I think that you brought up so many good points there. But when you just look at it, the fact that there are so many points to be made just goes to show you that there's other competing factors that are probably involved in this, not the least of which is probably pharma, right? And so pharma, what do? Is they're out there and they have their own people who are doing what? They're lobbying politicians. And then what are the politicians doing? Right? The politicians are taking money from them, and then this thing turns into something that it should never have been. So, and I realize that that's a really cynical view to have, and yet, is there any other way to truly explain it? Is it just complete ineptitude on the part of Department of Corrections, on the part of whoever else is getting involved in these programs and stuff, or are people earning money off of this? So I think that we need to be a whole lot more careful with getting involved in this stuff, because it just seems to take on a life of its own. It just seems to really like, hey, hoorah, this is going to be great. And then all of a sudden, what was it? I think first, maybe the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, all of a sudden you start hearing about suboxone being smuggled into prison. Wow. Who saw that coming? There were some people.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we have a few more questions. I think this is another good question. I'll have my guest always go first. Paul asks a good question. How do you get through to people during the hiring quality over quantity, especially when it's a time when we are so short-staffed? I have a great answer to this, but I'd like to have Russ go first, and then I'll compliment his answer.
So standards, right? Standards are the problem that they deal with. When you set your standards high enough, it means that you're going to limit the pool of people that you can potentially hire from. The way that you get around that is by offering people the things that they want and the things that they need. I always bring in, that old acronym of mine, STEP, S for status, T for training, E for equipment, and P for pay. Right. And that's how it really is. In order to attract people, you're going to have to give them those things. You're going to have to provide that kind of environment for them in order to make that pool of people that apply that much bigger. And the problem is that the bean counters don't understand what the relationship is between that and the people that come in and get trained and then decide this isn't for them. Or they just decide, you know what, I got a much better job because it pays more somewhere else. And all of those training dollars end up being continually flushed right down the toilet. Instead, what we should be focusing on is retention and what I talked about, STEP, right? Status. I think that, every group that does what we do should have that peace officer status. I think that the training that we have should go along with that. Everybody should get, however many hours of disturbance control and alarm response and identifying drugs and all of those things that peace officers do. Then when we talk about equipment, I mean, there's so many places out there that still don't have pepper spray. I mean, what the heck? I talked to a guy in a department the other day that they weren't allowed to have handcuff keys. They could only have handcuffs. Do you know how dangerous that is? You slam a guy in handcuffs and it gets, pressed on his ulnar nerve and stuff. He can lose that hand if you can't open it. That's why everyone should have the proper keys, properly fitted, and why every place should have 40 millimeter launchers, and every place should have MK 46s and MK9s on their belts, and all this other high-end, high-quality stuff that we can really use to actually afford to have less people, maybe when they're well trained, and that we have all that equipment out there, right? And then finally, the pay. Everyone should be earning that pay that gets them those things that they've got by being a peace officer, by having all that training, by having, all of those other things. Hello, Mia.
Hi. Hey, say hi real quick. She came down to bring me water. Say hi to Russ. Actually, you know what? At this point, Russ, we know each other for many years. We're going to make it official on this channel. Can you say hi to Uncle Russ?
Hi, Uncle Russ.
Hello, Mia.
Okay, maybe I'll be up there shortly.
Bye.
I love you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Uncle Russ is official, Russ. Okay, go ahead, Russ. Sorry about that.
Oh, so just, in reiterating that's where we have to be to have that pool be big enough that we can, supply the demand that we have for the amount of manpower that we need, and to have our standards, either stay high or be taken higher.
Yeah, and I want to add, because Russ hit a lot of, again, just going to compliment what Russ said here. So quality versus quantity, right? So I get it. Right now we're in desperation mode, and the agencies are doing what they can, hopefully. I mean, they're going to hire the pay. They're going to do what they can, create those external incentives. But you got to realize something, guys. Hey, yeah, Mia says hi to everyone. Love you guys. You got to realize something. This goes beyond external incentive. This also goes by who we put these people next to when we get the right quality people. Let me share something with you guys. Me and Russ, Russ Keepers of Chaos, myself, Tier Talk, Just Corrections, Gary York's channel. We try to create a vision of a profession that people want to join. And yes, there is an inherent risk. We all know that. I mean, you're working in a prison or a jail. I don't think that has to be advertised. You know what you're getting into. That this job is not going to be easy, at least from the get-go. So having said that, we've provided these resources so people can research and, maybe ask questions from people that work in the profession, something that I never had coming in. Russ never had it. A lot of people didn't have it, but now in these last couple of years, I know I started this up in like 2014 or 2015. And since then, I've been doing it ever since. The Facebook groups, all this stuff, they've just become a resource for people to utilize to grow. Now, with that said, unfortunately, there are some people that have used these resources to vent, what we call recreational complaining. And at the end of the day, no matter what you do, no matter what image you try to paint, they always want to bring things back to the negative. Connie doesn't work on weekends. Someone said, "Where's Connie?" So yeah, that's our girl. Connie's our girl. We'll see her Monday or Tuesday. I'll get her on a live, I promise. So what happens?
How do I get into her union?
Yeah, right. Right. I'm telling you, man, civilians are representing strong. So what happens here is that you get these people right now that if we want quality people to come into this profession, right? The quality behind that person is how they define their purpose when they come in, right? So if I'm looking for someone that's quality, one of the questions I'm going to ask them on the interview is, why do you want to be in this profession? And their answer is not going to be about, well, it pays this or I get better. I'm not looking for those answers. I'm looking for, where do you think your purpose is working in corrections? What it is that you think you can accomplish? How is this going to meet that goal of serving others? The greatest value you can have is obviously in the service of others. But when you want quality people, one of the questions that should be asked, that's never asked and understood, should be, why do you want to be in this profession? That's got to be asked. Now, with that said, if you take a person that's done their research, looked it up and said, wow, I could really do something good in this profession because I love this community. I've been a part of Keepers of Chaos. I'm enjoying the dialogue that we have right here on Tier Talk. I mean, mind you guys, we're talking, but there's a community to the side right now that's also having a chat. And it's a great chat, So these people are motivated to come in because of the people they think they're going to connect to. I want you to realize that. First impressions in this profession really has nothing to do with the profession itself. It's going to be who they're working next to. So having said that, I may go into corrections, and yes, maybe there is a bit of a culture shock when I get in, but my support, my peers are going to help me through it. They're not going to leave me isolated. It's not going to be a sink or swim, and they're going to cultivate my growth. We can't expect that person at day one to get culture shocked and we can leave them alone or her alone and let them deal with it. No, we're going to help them because we've all been through it, and we're going to make sure that even if there was stuff that I didn't know as a rookie, well, guess what? I'm going to make sure that they know because that's our job. Our experiences that we've committed to every day, once we've evaluated them, we go back and we give it to the rookies. Take my lesson. Take what I've learned in life so you don't have to go through the same things that I've gone through, because we want to keep these people. Now, the sad thing is, guys, here's the sad thing. The sad thing is we get somebody with quality who comes in with a purpose, and then we partner them with somebody who could give two shits about what they do. And when that person comes in and even says something like, hey, Russ, guess what? I just joined this profession. I'm going to have an impact. And then Russ turns around and says, in this profession's a joke. So now that same person, let's say Russ, for example, Russ is now going to complain in these Facebook groups that, yeah, and management's not doing enough to keep people and all this other stuff. Really? because there was a quality person that came in, was partnered next to you, and you literally told them that this profession's shit. So having said that, my biggest thing right now is that if we're going to retain quality people, it starts with the front line first. And even if we have somebody that may enter the profession for these external incentives, you could partner them next to somebody who will remind them that it's more than that. So if we want to sell the profession, we need to take every opportunity and sell it. And the other thing we got to do is not always badmouth everything. There's good in it. Struggle, find something good, and then see what we can do to let people know that there is promise here. But Russ, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that it could be said that both you and I and Connie and other people within our circle, when we have discussions, they're honest discussions, and we touch on the negative, and we talk about it, and we talk about ways to overcome that, but we talk about the good too, and more than that, we talk about how to become that impact player. Because if there's one thing that I've prided myself on over the years, is being that impact player, that guy at the tip of the spear that's always going to do their best to make that dangerous situation go away, right? And so these people that are coming in, we want them to be cognizant of the negative things. I mean, like you said, it's a prison, it's a jail, it's a detention, it's a lockup facility. It is what it is, right? But at the same time, they can know that that is the thing that's going to present them with the challenges that are going to allow them to grow, that are going to allow them to become that consummate corrections professional. So it is a bit of a balancing act, though. I don't want people to come into the profession, thinking that everything is daisies and unicorns, because it certainly isn't. And I go into some of the bad things I've experienced, but most of all, I like to talk about the times that I went through with my peers where we were shoulder to shoulder and we managed to eke out a victory from the jaws of defeat. And so, I think that maybe that says about as much as can be said.
Yeah, and guys, to be honest with you, when it comes to that quality, as I mentioned, it has to lean a lot on the front line, the people that these new boots are going to directly interact with, and that's from all departments. If we don't have them doing their part, it doesn't matter what we bring in. It doesn't, because at the end of the day, is these people that are looking for a purpose. I think Geraldine says it best. I was asked when I was interviewed for the job why. My response was, it's my contribution to society, and unfortunately, she got kicked in the balls ever since. But can I tell you something? But it's powerful what she just said, because having said that, that is the truth, guys. She came in with a purpose, which is why let me tell you something, guys. If you have a defined purpose, that defines integrity. Because if you have a greater reason to be there, it's a lot harder for the inmates to shift you. Now, having said that, if you're partnered next to an officer who finds a way to minimize or negate that, well, then there's going to be a problem there, because now the core values that this person was holding on to no longer exist. So what happens here now is the inmates can manipulate. And one thing I always tell people is that when you enter this profession, stay connected to your core values. Don't let those core values ever shift. That's why I say evolve instead of change. You evolve. Well, let's just change sideways. Russ, what happened there, man? I felt like I fell off my pedestal for a second. Let's see if we can get him to turn around. Hold on, guys. We may lose him for a second, but he'll come back. He's a fighter. I can see him from below. But guys, that's why I say evolve instead of change. I say evolve instead of change because we're evolving from our past, but most likely, if that's a purpose and it's a defined purpose, we're strengthening it. We're hiring it. We're doing what we can to make sure that we have meaning. And for you to connect to someone as a rookie, and for that person to turn around and say, yeah, whatever you believe in is crap, and just have this recreational complaining. And by the way, this rookie is not going to understand where you're coming from. They just joined the profession. Our job is to cultivate them. Our job is to want them to stay. I would say the biggest concern we have in maintaining people in this profession really comes from when we get them in, how they connect with the front line and what the front line is looking to do. Again, we may be angry, I get it, but having said that, guys, we have to always struggle every day to see some level of hope. You know, there's got to be some level of hope in this profession. I mean, I want to wake up on Monday and enjoy going to work. I don't want to be miserable for 25 years. So I make it intentional to find something great every day, even amongst the negativity. You know, I mean, you have to be intentional when it comes to finding the good and the quality in this profession. Um, we'll get Russ back eventually, I hope. I had another question here from Jay Michelle. Maybe everybody can help us out with this one too. So he goes, guys, I've worked in corrections over 10 years, mostly second shift. I decided to go to first shift soon, but in my heart, I think I'm done with the jail. How do I know it's time to go? Well, best way to answer that is only you know for sure. I mean, I don't know what it is that's, you know, going against whatever it is that you want to accomplish. I mean, for me, I always tell people that when you enter corrections, one thing is you have to know who you are because that gives you a stable ground. And then you have to know what you want from this profession. I mean, a lot of times when we go through the interview process at day one of the questions that they ask us is, what can we provide? And that's great, you know, just to get into the profession. That's a great question to answer. But once you've been in it for a while, you got to start asking, what do you expect the profession to give you? And it's not a selfish question. This is a career for me. I want to make this a career. I'm going to devote a certain amount of time to this. So what is it that I'm expecting to get? So when you ask a question like that, the question has to be, or the answer to that is there something that you want that no longer aligns with this profession? Now, granted, you know, we have both personal and professional growth. I love corrections because somehow or another, I have aligned my professional growth with my personal growth. So I still find value in everything I do here. But if ever there was a conflict, not that I could just up and go, I'm too far into it now, but I would find a way to supplement. So if I found at any point that, which will never happen in corrections because there's so many areas that you can grow into, but if I found out at any point that it conflicted with my growth, I think that would be a bigger challenge. Like not that it's not in line, but it conflicted. So if I was doing something that conflicted with my growth, then I would have to find a way to balance that out at my point. Now, for you, if you're new or you have some time in or whatever it is, and you're thinking maybe I could take the jump because I'm not that invested, then you have to ask yourself, is there something that you're running towards, not running from? You know, that's another thing, guys. If you're looking to leave this profession, it's a lot easier to look like, you know, to run as if you're escaping from something. But then where am I going to? You know, I'm leaving this profession, but where am I headed? What's my North Star? What's my destination? I don't know. So I wouldn't recommend you leave at all just yet because you have no idea what you want. And the problem is if you don't know what you want, then how do you know the profession is not giving it to you? You know, you have to be intentional with what you want. So having said that, what I would ask you is, are you running away from something or are you running towards something? So if you're at the jail right now and you're looking to go, what is it that the jail's not giving you that you think you can get from somewhere else? Or if you're just mad at the job, I'm just done with it. I just can't deal with it. I'm done. I just want out. I would say that's not enough reason to quit because again, you're escaping something, but you're not running towards anything. So if you're not running towards anything, how do you know where you're going to next has what you want? So again, I guess the best way to answer that is you have to find out what you want, make a determination if the jail can give it to you or not. And if it can't give it to you, then see if you could find it somewhere else. But the biggest concern would be for me is my personal growth now in conflict with my professional growth? I mean, that's even different than I said being aligned. I mean, they may not always be aligned, you know, but if it's in conflict, to me, that's the bigger problem. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see. Hopefully people agree. I think I know her. One of the most professional officers I've gotten a chance to. Hey guys, we actually have someone that's I learned a lot when I was an officer from. See, I worked at a female facility. So she was one of the first officers that transferred to our female facility that worked at a male facility. And she taught me a lot about jailing, being a professional, and just balancing job with home. So it's pretty cool to see her. I know her as Pearsall, but then eventually Petty. But I'm actually honored to have her in this room. I just saw it now because I think you're the only Geraldine I know. So I just kind of, but again, guys, it's pretty cool to have someone like that who had an impact on me growing in this profession. And probably definitely when we talk about remembering your roots, a good way to remember your roots are positive interactions that you have with people that now has influenced you in your move up. So she's a big reason. Like if she said, remember my roots, I know we'll go back to all the positive dialogue we had that made me better as I moved in this profession. So I think it's pretty cool to have that person sitting in this room. There she is. Love you. I worked hard on that one there, Geraldine, or Officer Petty. Okay, so let's see. There was another question here. How many years of service would I have to put in until retirement? Depends on the agency. For us, the state I'm in, because we're considered law enforcement, we're committed to only 25 years. Well, I'm older, but then the new ones are committed to 30 years and usually get about 65% pension, full medical. For me, because I was grandfathered in, I have 25 years to do and 65% pension, but it could vary state by state because it depends on what pension you're going into. So that really does matter. So again, I won't be able to give you exactly what the time frame would be. I just know in my state, it's 30 years for 65% or 25 years for 50%, but no medical. Let's see. What else we got? Let's see. So if you guys agree, just let me know if you guys agree. Let's see. Where else are we? A lot of good. Jen, I retired back in November with 30 years as a lieutenant. That's Joe. Joe Pompano has been on the show multiple times before. He retired as a lieutenant. I believe he's out of Texas. And guys, don't forget, I got the book Inmate Manipulation Decoded on the market. And I also have another book coming out next year. It's going to be the Daily Reader. And it's just got random thoughts for the day. And guys, I'm telling you something. I find myself even referencing, and I'm only in March. I'm trying to do 400 words a day. And then what I do at the bottom is I get a quote from somebody, and then I publish that with the quote of the day. So we get different perspectives from, all different correctional facilities across the country. But I did commit to about 300 to 400 words of my own. And then, the bottom quote. I don't know. I think we lost Russ. I'm trying to see if Russ is going to come back in. I have a feeling when the phone does that, the phone may have died. So, hey guys, I'm going to read off one quote, and then I guess we'll call it a night. I'll see if I can get Russ maybe on later this week. But I want to read something I think would be good for thoughts, a little food for thought. And it's called, it's called Making an Impact. It's the first quote I have in my book that's coming out sometime, hopefully in 2023 at the very beginning. But this is why I joined the profession. And this is why I believe most people join the profession, especially Officer Pearsall. I'm sure this will relate to her too. But basically, it's like this. How can I add value to your life? Making a positive impact on someone else's life is an intentional act. Working in corrections, there are so many opportunities to add value to someone else's life, whether through our daily interactions with the inmates, with our peers, with supervisors, with subordinates. The list goes on and on and on. Now, guys, mind you, you can have influence all around you, up, down, all around. Sad to say, most of these opportunities are missed. Opportunities that will allow for a truly positive, everlasting exchange mostly go unnoticed by correctional staff because of their negative perception of the working environment, prison or jail. Sometimes that perception becomes so overwhelming because for many, that perception connects to their identity that they begin to question their overall value in the service of something greater. Basically, correctional staff begin to question their own self-worth, and ultimately they begin to lose out on any chance of being fulfilled. Oh, Sergeant Petty. There it is. Sergeant Petty. Let's see. And by the way, she isn't petty. She's amazing. But her name is Sergeant Petty. P-E-T-T-I. Be mindful. There is value in this profession, and that value comes from the positive impact staff can have in someone else's life. It's an impact that's intentional, profound, everlasting, and is shaped by life experiences, good moral code, and most important, the shared purpose and the positive growth of another human being. Remember, as staff move forward in this profession, as the days become years and the end can be seen in the horizon just up ahead, they'll look backwards for value and significance. Trust and believe that the final look backwards has nothing to do with the positions they have attained, but rather the lives they have touched. And I got a quote from Officer Hyde here, and they say, positive thoughts bring about positive outcomes, even in negative situations. And that's day one of the Daily Reader. Let's see if we can finish off. Thanks, Mr. Gangi. I appreciate that, Dion. Let me see if I can get one more question in here. I've been watching your videos since I started corrections in 2018, and I got a lot of good info that I'm still using. Thanks. Oh, thank you, Spiritual Path. I appreciate that. Do most usually have designated medical officers? That's a good question. I assume. Oh yeah, Callie Gross from medical. I know who she is. So it's funny, Callie. Sorry about this, but I'm telling you guys something. It just people ask a question, and I go right to this daily reader I'm putting in. March 9th is about medical and custody working together. And I have a lot of videos on that, by the way. But for working in a jail or prison, if the prison or jail has bids, you may find some consistency. I think actually it's great when medical and custody are working together. I think it's great. Yeah, Russ just texted me, his phone went out. I think it's great. We do need some consistency, but the consistency, I will say one thing. The consistency for medical may not always come from the officer on the floor. That would be great if we could get that, but it may really go from the supervisors right above that officer. So again, if medical needs help with something, you do want medical personnel to talk directly to the officer in need, but sometimes officers, they could call out or you can get someone different on the post. So hopefully you usually have a supervisor in the same designated area, the immediate frontline supervisor that will also work with medical. But I definitely would hope that we can get a good working relationship with the floor officer and medical personnel. And to be honest with you, it really shouldn't matter who's working there. They should expect the same level of cooperation. Now, the only difference is that if you have officers that know policy and procedure, that's great. They'll help medical, will get the job done. Sometimes what happens is the argument comes from practices that they expect that really are, oh, here's Russ. Sometimes it comes from practices where medical may get used to something that's really not policy or procedure, but a practice that's done through that custody officer. And then when that custody officer is not there, medical's like, well, why aren't they doing it this way? And the other officer's like, well, that's not how we do it. That's not policy. And now we still develop some level of inconsistency. So it would be good for medical to also understand that through time, you may develop a rapport with an officer or supervisor, and they may allow for certain things, not because it's based on policy or procedure, but because through time, you guys develop the practice, a routine, nothing a violation, just a way of doing things that may be a little bit more convenient. But now if you work with somebody new, a new supervisor or a new officer, they may not be familiar with those practices. So you're like, well, everything's being so inconsistent. Why are we doing things differently? Well, because the one officer you worked with through time, they were doing things through practice because they knew you. Now this officer here is doing things as if it's policy and procedure because they're never really at the post and they're going by what's more comfortable for them. Russ, does that make sense to you, Russ? I know you caught the bit end of that.
Yeah, there's the way things are done that are within policy and procedure. They're what you would call past practice. As long as they're within that policy and procedure, that's fine. Sometimes they're better than policy and procedure, in which case we should always try and cover ourselves by bringing those up into compliance with whatever it is that we're doing, especially if you can make the case that something is more safe, more effective, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and guys, I do agree with Jody, and I'll tell you why I agree with that. I love the show. When I get off work and join in, I feel refreshed knowing that there's others that know what I'm going through. That's pretty powerful. Thanks, Paul. And I just want to say, where is my sergeant emailed us a link to your inmate manipulation. It was awesome. And I told her I love Tear Talk. Guys, if you email me now at gangianthony@yahoo.com, I will give you the link to the inmate manipulation course for free. So I'll send you here's my email right now. If you want to email me before the show is done, I will go ahead and email you the link to the manipulation course, and it does reflect off the book. I want to answer something here. I saw where is it? Saw it on the bottom here. Where is it, Russ? We were talking about medical. Geraldine mentioned Sergeant Petty. Where is she? Sergeant Petty. Okay, so when we have Connie on the show, she touches on the civilian side of things, and she talks about a thing called role ambiguity. Role ambiguity basically is that when civilians first come into corrections, they don't really know what they're getting into, and the world can be very confusing for them. Actually, it's funny now because I think the world's becoming more confusing for us as custody until we find our place, until we know our place exists. But having said that, it is going to be confusing for medical. So I believe when it comes to the civilian side in general, not just medical, a lot of the times they're lacking because they're afraid to ask why something exists. You know, they may see things at a surface, but they may not know why we truly do things the way we do. And I think the best way we can help them is don't just tell them the what we do, tell them the why we do it so they can understand it. I know a lot of times they may see something as, well, why are you sweating if an inmate has a pen they shouldn't have, or why don't we allow gum, or why can't I go in with the bag lunch today? Why is that such a big deal? And a lot of us will be quick to say because you can't, because policy and procedure says this, that doesn't help them. Because policy and procedure just tells you what to do. It doesn't tell you the why we do it. That's our job. So if you want to help staff understand what it is that we do and why we do it, then don't just point them to the policy. Tell them why it exists. Give them a level of understanding, because with that why, when you tell them the why, it limits their argument against it, because the why is deep. It's built on the successes and failures of the facility. But I do believe medical's lacking in a lot because they don't know the whys behind a lot of the stuff that we do. And would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, I always liken it to the old onion adage there. You talk about a lot of these people, they don't understand the depth of the thing that it is that they're living on there. They only see the onion from the outside because, they crawl around on the outside, and they don't see anything about the depth and the layers below it. And so for them to think about, an inmate manipulating or faking a seizure, or, doing some of these, heinous acts, throwing bodily fluids on people, to them, that's nothing that they've maybe even heard of in the past. And they don't understand the reasons behind the things we do are all usually, preventative, because something bad has happened in the past. Somebody's been stabbed with that pen, somebody's, brought in a rig or some dope or something in that brown paper bag, and so they really don't get it. I had the director of nursing who I was talking to at one point, and he was coming over just to say hi to me, and I was getting ready to go into where we processed evidence at, and I just happened to show him these two fantastic shanks that I just got off the yard that day, and he was just stunned. He was like, "Wow!" He says, "Man, it's probably been months or years since anyone found any shanks out there." And I mean, he was really truly aghast. I said, for me, this is, a couple times a week. And so he really didn't have that understanding that the inmates that we were dealing with were manufacturing lots of weapons. And there was, lots of stabbings, potential stabbings out there, riots, some with weapons, some without, and just didn't understand what these people are capable of. And so it's always good when we can go in there. And at that point there, man, I started mailing him every week what my finds were: the cell phones that I found, the dope that I found, the rigs that had come out of medical. He wasn't happy about that, but he understood then better what it was that he was facing and that his staff was facing that they were completely unaware of. You're mute. Gotcha.
You got me. Hey, Caligrove, if you're still there, do me a favor. I know you have my email. Can you email me a 2-sentence quote on the importance of medical and custody working together so I can finish off March 9th? And then just tell me how you want to be referenced in that quote. And then you will be forever published when the book comes out. I'm accepting quotes, but again, it's got to meet what we're talking about for that day. All right, guys. So before we come to a close, I know we lost Russ for a while, but now that we have Russ back, Russ came back just to kind of sign off and wish everybody good luck. But Russ, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Just as everyone, we face a lot of things out there. Don't let, your current situation, which sometimes can be bad, get you down. Always manage to find a way to stay safe. Always manage to find a way to make things safer. Be out there, be the hard hitter, be the crime fighters that we are, and just, stick with this. And just do everything you can to feel good in your heart about what you do every day, because you are providing an essential service to society. I mean, what would happen if we just turned all these guys loose? It's bad enough that we're kind of doing that in a way right now. The current zeitgeist being what it is, but we still stand in between society and the worst of the worst of the worst.
Yeah, and guys, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. As we do this, as we do each live show, we learn a lot because we never know what questions are gonna be asked, and we kind of just kind of develop a dialogue in which we all learn from each other. We have a couple events coming our way that we'll be speaking at. It's great advice. Stay true to yourself. Great advice, and I agree with that. That's a great words of wisdom to live by for your whole career.
Bard.
Yeah, we got, let's see, Masca. We'll be at Masca in Atlantic City. If you guys are in Atlantic City, check out Masca. It's a good event. It's about 3 days. We'll be there for one of the days. We also will be in Wisconsin in October, New York State, I believe, sometime in October. And I'll also be in Long Beach, California for the AJA. I'll be the keynote speaker at the AJA conference up in Long Beach, California around May. I think it's May 21st. If you guys are out there, let's hang out. Let's get to know each other. Let's talk shop. Let's talk leadership. Let's talk about whatever it is. But it's great sometimes to have this dialogue outside of the prison setting, or the jail setting, so we can just ask freely and be ourselves. So when we answer a question, we don't answer a question just based on your position, the profession, but hopefully questions that we can answer on a more personal level. So basically, how we like to answer a question is really based on how we can help the person first, and then how does that help the profession, if that makes sense, because we're all about the people. Love what you do what you love. Look at this great stuff. Closing off on some beautiful stuff. And love you too, Patty. All right, guys. As always, the show is tiered up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Guys, and let me one thing. YouTube does not share me out. I am like screwed on their algorithm. So if you get a chance, guys, share it out. Do what you can so I can get some organic traffic, because I am not getting it the other way. All right, guys, take care and be safe.